Good afternoon. We're here today with Almas Jamil Sami, the great author of The Unshackled Mind, which I am proud to talk about with this man today because it helped inspire me to make some positive changes in my own life. Why did you write The Unshackled Mind, Mr. Sami?
Well, The Unshackled Mind is a book that I wrote primarily because I was writing it to myself. You can imagine, early on in my life, my father was literally a sharecropper from Oklahoma, southwest Oklahoma. Then I moved to a small town, a village really, and we got Clinton, Oklahoma, by the way, which I'm very proud of. There were very few people in that town who would impart the kind of information that I needed for my own edification. You know, there was very little black history taught. Most of the black history that was taught in this country. You know, what did Harriet Tubman do, which is fine. What did Frederick Douglass do, which is necessary. You know, Delaney, all the different wonderful things that we've taken that's happened here in this country was all covered in my segregated school, Excelsior, that I grew up in. What wasn't covered is who we were before we were slaves, before we were enslaved. That bothered me. And it really bothered me when I found out that there's a whole lot of information out there, a truckload of information, centuries of information that was kept from me. Now, that's the first part. The second thing is that during my early years, you know, after I graduated and got out of it and sorted out on the world on my own, I did things like sales. I was real big in sales. And we had all these motivational books that we would read, you know, Think and Go Rich and so on and so forth. And I got motivated by a lot of those books. A lot of them didn't work, but a lot of them did help me out. And I was always pumping something very positive in my brain. Always, forever saying, rah, let's go do this thing. Let's get up in the morning and make it happen. Let's go. And I said, well, there needs to be a book about like that written by somebody black. So I set out to write a book, a self-help motivational book. And then the more I started studying about Afrocentric ideals, the more I started studying about Sheikh Anta Diop from West Africa, the more I started studying Malefi Asante, the more I studied all the great things we did in Africa and the way of building the pyramids and the wonderful Shanghai dynasties, the wonderful, powerful life that we are as a people. I thought, man, you know, what happens if I combine this information with the rah-rah speech kind of information, the positive motivational information? And I thought, wow, that's necessary because most of the time, unfortunately, a part of our growth as a people is that we came about with this information and it came hard. You know, most people who went over to Africa and dug this information up were ostracized in this country by blacks as well as whites. And nobody respected them. Most of them lost their homes, their lives, their families. They went through many, many things. And as a result of that, coming out of the 60s and the early 70s with the Black Power movement, we mixed this information with it. So as a result, I noticed that whenever I would go to some of these meetings to study black history, we would study for an hour, but only 10 minutes of that is talking about the greatness of our people. The negativity that just poured out of those meetings about what the white men did this and the white men did that. And I would leave with that information thinking, wow, what powerful people we have, but I didn't feel that. I just left angry because of the way the information was presented to me. It was so negative. So I wanted to create a book that I put out there myself that addressed my needs as an 8th grade angry young black male. I was already angry. I didn't need any more information. It's going to make me more angry. And I sure didn't want to mix in the wonderful, powerful things of our ancestors like Imhotep. You know, our ancestors who did great things, who were the forebearers of civilization, who brought civilization to the world. I didn't want to mix that in with my hostility that I had for my own, not only the world at large, but my own particular circumstances. So I created a book that had chapters like Roar with the Lion, right after a chapter that says slavery, leave slavery behind, you know, farewell to slavery. And then you have a chapter on desire. Then you have a chapter on success. You have a chapter on building faith. How do you build faith? You know, those kinds of things that I've been working on my own. I decided to put them out there. And lo and behold, I came up with this wonderful book that I think is The Unshackled Mind. I love this book. It is my first book, and I absolutely love it. There are times I read it now and I go, wow, man, that book came through me, not from me. So I was privileged. I feel privileged to have been able to write a primer. That's really what it is. It's a primer to some of the great books that are out there. It's not going to be the kind of thing that if you're an Afrocentric person already, instilled with a lot of knowledge about a history and culture, you're not going to learn anything new. It's not a treatise by any stretch of the imagination. But what it is, it's an introduction into that world, and it is a positive introduction. One of the greatest compliments I got, I was giving a book signing in a lecture in Dallas, and a young lady stood up during the Q&A session, and she said, I want to thank you for what you've done, because my dad is a dentist, and my mother is, I think she said, a doctor or lawyer or something, educated people, high upper middle class people. And she grew up, and she said, my mother and father, my parents told me to stay away from people like you because you were so negative. And most of the people that I'd encountered had this negative aura about them. And she said, and you're the first person that made me want to delve into my history, my culture. And I just want to thank you, and I want to applaud you for that. I felt so good about that because, what good does it do for us to have the goal but not figure out a way to mine it, not figure out a way to get this information to the people, in a way that will edify them, in a way that make them just burst out of the room. I know whenever I go to schools, and sometimes I go to all white schools with just a sprinkling, a spattering of black kids in there, 2 or 3 black kids. And as soon as they introduce me, I can see the black kids bow their heads, like, oh, here we go. And they just kind of sink down in the chair. But I present black history in such a manner with this book, is that by the time I finish, man, I remember one time I finished and a little white kid stood up and said, man, black people rock. Right there in the classroom, and the whole classroom was clapping, and the kids came up and got autographs. All the kids came up and got autographs. And I noticed those black kids finally started sitting up straight. They changed their whole demeanor. And by the time I walked out of that room, there were some black boys and one little black girl who were proud to be black. And that's what I wanted them to be. I wanted them to be proud to be African, proud to be born in this country, proud to be able to go from where they are now to where they are, and understanding that there are some people whose shoulders they're standing upon, who never set foot on this country, but they are still with us. And we presented that information in such a manner.
Okay. Yes, I want to add a comment to that I read your book myself, and your book was very inspiring to me, and it helped me back in my early days too. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful piece of work.
Thank you.
Which brings us to the second question, Mr. Sami. What is what I would tell you these things if I were your father about?
That's my second book. I would tell you these things about your father, and we put it up there where they can get a look at it. See? This is my second book. I decided to put it out in audio first. And I'm driving down the freeway one day, and that title popped in my head. It wasn't until years later that I decided to do anything with it. But I'm just driving down the street, and I'm thinking about all these young brothers who don't have anybody to talk to. Any of these brothers who, nobody tells them things that they need to know. Like I told my son, primarily my son, because, girls tend to get what they need, but boys very seldom in this country get what they need. And I was looking at it from that perspective, and I said, well, so I wrote it for all black boys and black girls, black young people in general. I wrote it for black people in general. So I put this out there, and basically what it is, it's 2 sections to it. The first section, kind of like Tina Turner used to say, when she used to sing that song, she said, we're going to finish rough. Well, I did the exact opposite. I started rough. I started out with a part called the bus wreck. And I used that metaphor throughout. And the bus wreck simply is, the metaphor is simply, it goes as, there was an old black lady on the side of the road fixing a flat tire. She was called Mother Africa. There's a bus coming down. It's a rainy night, thunder. And there's a bus coming down. And as this bus comes, everybody on this bus is the rest of humanity. I mean, all other races are on this bus. They don't know that they're all interconnected. They really think that they are separate from one another. The only one who knows that they're not separate from one another is the mother of all of them, and that's that little black lady changing the flat tire on the side of the road. The reason she's changing the flat tire is because she is older than the rest of the people on the bus, so she has her own transportation. She's far removed from the public transportation phase of her development. The rain comes, the road gets slick, the bus driver loses control of the bus, and the bus careens, falls over, careens, goes down the highway, skids, turns around, and eventually flips over this woman on the side of the road, changing the flat tire. Everybody on that bus was injured. I mean, everybody was injured. You know, Chinese guy might have had a busted wrist. Somebody from Europe might have had a neck brace. Somebody from Japan might have had a bad foot. Everybody on this thing called life gets hurt. We all do. But what they don't understand, if people on the bus don't understand, is that the black woman on the side of the road got skidded over by the bus, has injuries that the rest of them will never understand. So as a people, we spend our time trying to get people on the bus to understand our pain. And my notion is that we need to stop that, because nobody that wasn't under the bus wreck will understand what we went through for 500 years. Talking about a Holocaust, it was a Holocaust, or what we call a Ma'afa, that lasted years and years and centuries and centuries and centuries. It's not to say that nobody else was injured. It's not to belittle anybody else's injured, because life hurts all of us. Life leaves all of us hurt. We've all been slaves. We've all been masters. We've all been up. We've all been down. But this, I would tell you these things, if I were your father, what it's really about is about covering those issues. We go from that particular metaphor on into what happened on the plantation. Willie Lynch. What is a Willie Lynch? What is that all about? Then we talk about what happened with the race riots, Jim Crow, right on up until now. And then we started, the second half of it are 8 guiding principles that young people need to know. And those 8 guiding principles are as such. Number 1, you must come to know how valuable you are as human beings. We all need to know that. The problem we have with so many of our kids is they don't know they're valuable. You know, in fact, they are invaluable to our future. They're a part of us, and we need to impart to them that they are much, much more than they think.
That's right.
The second thing is, you must understand the power that you have today and know that you directly control the future well beyond your own generation. In other words, we're connecting them to the past, but letting them understand fully that not only are you connected to the past, it's up to you to tend to the cleanup effort for those who come in front of you, behind you, for those who are coming yet to be born. So you need to get your stuff together, utilizing the strength of the people of the past, so that the people coming, your children, your grandchildren, will have a better life. You have that capability. You have that power. Number 3, we must become a nation of readers. In other words, we must become educated people. We must know. What's that old saying? If you want to hide something from black people, put it in a book, because chances are we're not going to read it. The incredible thing is, I say about black people, and this is just a typical example. We have a president, the first truly black president, Barack Hussein Obama, is the president of the United States. Wrote 2 books. One book is Dreams from My Father. Excellent book. The other book is The Audacity of Hope, political manifesto. You'd be surprised how many black people I run across that have actually read the books. The first black president wrote 2 books, and we won't even read his book. That's an example of how far we are behind the curve. We really need to, and if we understood him, if we read that book, then we would understand what he's going through. Number 4, we have the right, we have to be able to reshape, retool, and reorganize our world. We have that power. We need to let our babies know that it's up to them to reshape this thing. It's up to them to retool this thing. It's up to them to take us into the future. They're much, much stronger than they believe. We have to let them know that, and that's what that particular one is about. Number 5, you must know that you have the power of invention. And this one takes us to the hip-hop generation. You know, I really admire the hip-hop generation because they've done something that no other group of blacks have done in this country. No other group has taken over the whole music industry the way they did. And they shared the wealth with one another. Started out selling music out of the back of the trunks of the cars, and it evolved. Now, it later got taken over to some degree by big business and whatnot, but it's still a schematic that we can use. They followed in many cases, the principles of Minister Elijah Muhammad, who built an empire showing black people how to work with black people. The hip-hop generation did the same thing, and it expanded, exploded, and we need to stop. And there are a lot of negative things about our young brothers in the hip-hop generation, and I know there are. I hear them, I feel it, I see it. But we also must pay very close attention to the intestinal fortitude that it took to build that market the way they did. They took a market, built a market, started it from their own, and out of their own neighborhoods, out of the trunk of their own cars, they created something that the whole world is now aware of. We can follow that model in many different ways. Number 6, you must learn how the human body works. In other words, if your diet consists of nothing but French fries from McDonald's, pizza from Pizza Hut. Now, I'm not trying to beat these companies up. God bless them. They're trying to make a buck. But we have to learn how to feed ourselves. We have to learn how to grow our own food. We have to learn the difference between healthy food and food that are carcinogen. We have to learn the difference between food that are nutritious, that is nutritious for us, and food
that cause cancer,
that cause every ailment we know, including cancer, including the mind-numbing experiences that many of us have with sugars and so many other products that are out there. We have to learn how to do that. You know, so we talk about that.
I agree.
I use a chitlin example in there, and it's hilarious actually to me. I may be sick, but it's hilarious. And then number 7, you must know the nature of racism. Now that's the very careful thing. We, as black people, we have to walk a very fine line. Do we ignore the racism the way some blacks do? Parents say, well, I don't want my child to be so negative, so I'm not going to talk about racism. Because they're going to be hating whites and can't get a job. Just like a lot of those cats on the street. Standing there in the dashiki all angry. They don't want that for their children. I'm not saying that everybody in the dashikis is angry. I wear dashikis too. But I'm talking. I'm just giving a simple example of what's turning many black people off from teaching black history or teaching about racism. So, the second thing is, the problem we have is that we teach it too much, too strong. So we have to walk that fine line. They must know, because it's cold out here in this world if you're black. Mm-hmm. So it would be foolish to deny that. But by the same token, it would be just as foolish to ignore and send our babies into this world and get kicked around without fortification of understanding. So number 7, rule number 7, deals with that, and it's not really delicate. It's some hard choices to be made in there, but it talks about walking that fine balance between what they need to know, and it also, we talk about delivering having the conversation in a way that makes them feel proud. Your people suffered. You have their strength inside of you. Stand up, get up, stay up. I have this vision of an old black lady. She's 42 years old, but she looks 82 because she's been on the plantation all her life. God bless her. She gets up every morning at 5 o'clock, and she works until it's dark, every day. God bless her. The only thing that gets her up in the morning is knowing that someday we are who we are now. She knew that we would become behind her. She knew that there would be people like you and I here now that got her up in the morning. See, that's the kind of energy that we can use to get up in the morning and do what we have to do. That's the kind of power that we have in our own hearts and minds and souls that we don't readily utilize unless we go to them and go to these young people and say, this is who you are. Don't be ashamed of that. Embrace that.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
I understand exactly what you're saying.
And then number 8, you must learn that you are not alone. And we talk about how many people, how many generations came behind all of us that are watching us, that are rooting us on. You know, it's a beautiful thing when young people know that there's a system in place. There were many systems in place that's going to help them get from point A to point B. Just look inside of yourself, as you say on your interviews. You know, your philosophy is to look inside of yourself. You don't have to look outside of you. You don't have to look out. You don't have to look to another race. You don't have to try to be anybody else. You don't have to try to do things outside of what's already innately inside of you. Just look in there. You'll find more reservoir. You'll find things in there that you can't imagine.
That's right.
It's a beautiful thing. So that's what that is. I would tell you these things if I were your father. And I have another one called Spirit, the Church Within Inside of Us. And it's basically, most people, because of my name, Almas Jamil Sami, they think I'm a Muslim. And I have a lot of really good close Muslim friends, by the way, family members even. But I am a spiritualist in the sense that I take it all in. I think it's all good. I love it all. I'm there. I mean, if I'm with somebody and we go to church, I'll find something in that church. I'll find something in that sermon that touches me in a special way that I'm supposed to hear. You know, if I go to a masjid or a mosque, if I go to a temple, sometimes, one day I'm driving down the street and the brother asked me, how do I pray? I said, well, shoot, man, let's go do this thing. And there was a patch of undeveloped land on the side of the freeway, right here in San Antonio. Pulled over, we went and found a tree. Leaned up against that tree, did some meditation. Trees are very unique in the sense that, they reach far deep into the ground and grab all the nutrients that Mother Earth has to offer. And they reach into the heavens and grab the wisdom of our Father Time. So when you walk up to a tree, yes, I'm a tree hugger. I'm one of those nuts that whenever I see a tree that attracts me to it, I'll walk over there and get some of that energy. And that, there has to be energy. I'm big on energy. There has to be wonderful energy coming from those trees, and there is. Just try it. So I can go to church there as well. And
yes,
these are the things that we try to pass on in spirit, the church within us. And then I have a children's book that I'm going to get out here. I've been messing with this thing for years now. It's a wonderful children's book called When Trees Could Walk. There again, that theme of trees. And I look forward to doing that as well. I don't know when I'm going to get it out, but I'm working on it. And probably do some cartoons with it.
Okay.
Try to do some,
that sounds good, Mr. Sami.
Stuff, yeah. So the future is bright. I have a great life. I don't know the difference between Sunday and Thursday, man. I mean, every day is a weekend for me. Every day is a holiday. I get to do whatever it is I want to do. But I paid the price.
So the universe has just converged into one focal point for you.
Excellent way of putting it. It converged into one focal point for me, and I get a chance to dance the dance that I want to live. I get a chance to sing the song.
To walk your own path.
I get a chance to walk my own path. I get a chance to be me.
That's right.
And what greater gift is that from the ancestors? And it leaves me with a sense of peace. And in closing, let me just say this. Peace is the one gift that precedes all other gifts. You can have $1 million a day, but without peace, you're miserable.
That's
you
right.
can have nothing and live in a shanty, but with peace, you have everything. So peace is a beautiful thing. So we talk about trying to cultivate a life where you can bring about peace. Hopefully these products will help people get there. Thank you very much.
I do agree with you, Mr. Sami, and thank you. We have Mr. Almas Jamil Sami in closing for this wonderful interview today by Mr. Rah Ethereal. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
good night.